All right. So are you ready to dive into this electoral map with me?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay, so today we're talking potential Trump victory scenarios
Right.
in the upcoming election.
Right.
We've got some really insightful analysis to unpack here,
Yeah.
really focusing on those swing states
Right.
and all the different paths that Trump could take to reach that magic number,
Yes.
270 electoral votes
270.
to get back to the White House.
And what I think is so fascinating about this particular
Right.
deep dive that we're doing is that, it's
Yeah.
not just one way to get there. There are multiple scenarios that could play out.
Right.
And we're going to break down each of those and look at the factors at play and
Yeah.
why it matters to you come election night.
Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
before we get into, like, the nitty-gritty
Yeah.
of these swing states,
Yeah.
can you set the scene for us? Like, what's
Yeah.
the baseline
Yeah.
that we're working with here?
So imagine it's,
Okay.
election night. We're watching the results roll in.
Right.
And Trump starts off with 219 electoral votes,
Okay.
while Harris is projected to have 226.
Okay.
So already you can see,
Yeah, it's close.
very, very tight race.
Yeah.
Every electoral vote is going to matter.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, our goal here is 270.
Right. 270.
That magic number to clinch the presidency.
All right. 270 it is.
Yes.
So let's talk strategy.
Okay.
What would be the most straightforward path to victory for Trump?
Well, the analysis kind of lays out this path. They call it the East Coast Trio.
East Coast Trio.
And it's pretty much what it sounds like.
Okay.
Trump needs to win 3 key states on the East Coast: Georgia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania.
Okay.
If he takes all 3 of those states, he hits that 270 exactly.
Oh, wow.
It'd be a squeaker.
Yeah.
But a win's a win, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's all that matters.
That's all that matters.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're looking at 2 of those states, Georgia and North Carolina.
Right.
And they have historically leaned Republican right.
Yeah, I mean, historically,
So do that give Trump an edge in this scenario?
on paper, it certainly seems that way.
Okay.
North Carolina has gone red in 5 of the last 6 presidential elections.
Wow.
In fact, it was the only swing state that Trump won in both 2016 and 2020.
Interesting.
And then you have Georgia, which has a similar track record,
Yeah.
although it did flip blue in the last election.
Right.
So, these 2 states potentially
Yeah.
could be a little bit less of a hurdle for Trump.
Okay.
But, we still got Pennsylvania in there,
Pennsylvania.
which is always a nail biter,
Always, always.
as we know.
So what is the polling data telling us about these 3 states right now?
It is
Yeah.
really a nail biter. I mean, across the board, all 3 of these states are showing incredibly tight races in the polls. Trump, he holds a slight edge in Georgia and North Carolina, but in Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
it's razor thin. I mean, it is anyone's game.
Wow. So
Yeah.
if we're sticking with this East Coast trio strategy,
Yeah.
Pennsylvania could really make or break
It's
it.
the linchpin. Absolutely.
For Trump,
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say, hypothetically,
Okay.
Trump wins Georgia and North Carolina,
Okay.
but Pennsylvania doesn't go his way.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other options for him to secure a win?
Well, that's where things get really interesting, because that's where we move into what the
Okay.
analysis calls paths 2 and 3.
Paths 2 and 3.
They're kind of the alternative routes if Pennsylvania slips through his fingers.
Okay.
He's got to make up those electoral votes somewhere else.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Okay, I'm very intrigued. So tell me,
Yeah.
where could he make up that ground? So like path 2, for instance.
So path 2, he still needs to win Georgia and North Carolina. But to compensate for a loss in Pennsylvania, he's got to set his sights on Arizona and Wisconsin.
Okay.
And if he takes those, that puts him just over the top at 272 electoral votes.
Okay, so that's one option.
That's one option.
What about path 3?
Path 3 is very similar.
Okay.
It still assumes those wins in Georgia and North Carolina.
Okay.
But instead of Wisconsin, Trump needs to flip Michigan along with Arizona.
Okay.
And this path actually gives him a bit more breathing room,
Okay.
landing him at 277 electoral votes.
Interesting.
So even if Pennsylvania goes blue,
Yeah.
it's not game over.
Gotcha.
There are still ways he can compensate by winning these other key states.
So even if he loses that one, he could still potentially
Potentially, yeah.
pull off a win.
Yeah.
Okay. And what does the polling data say? about
This is what's interesting.
his chances with these alternative paths.
Yeah, so going by the latest polling averages, Trump is actually ahead in both Arizona and Michigan.
Okay. And this is important. We're talking very slim margins here.
Oh, okay.
Very, very
So it could go either way.
It could absolutely go either way.
Okay.
And then in Wisconsin, he's actually trailing slightly behind Harris.
Gotcha.
So each of these states,
Yeah.
could easily swing the election.
It's anyone's game.
Yeah.
It's crazy how much, really rides
Yeah.
on these handful of states.
I know. They really
They
could.
could totally flip the script.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But before we move on, I'm curious.
Yeah.
Arizona and Michigan,
Right.
they've both kind of historically favored Republican candidates,
Right.
right?
They have.
Could that play a role here?
Yeah. So it's true. They have historically.
Yeah.
Arizona has gone red in 5 of the last 6 presidential elections.
Okay.
The exception being Biden's narrow victory in 2020.
Right.
And then you have Michigan.
Yeah.
Which, while it has this kind of history of being a Democrat state,
Yeah.
it did flip red for Trump in 2016.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, there's a real chance that they could swing back to the Republican column.
Interesting. So their recent history might offer a little bit of hope
Yeah,
for Trump in this case.
for sure.
Okay, so we've covered 3 potential paths to victory so far,
Right.
all kind of hinging on these different
Different combinations, yeah.
of swing states.
Absolutely.
What about path 4?
Okay.
How does that one work?
So path 4, I think this one is really interesting
Okay.
because it tackles this potential curveball in this election.
Okay.
There's been this kind of growing concern among Republicans about their gubernatorial candidate in North Carolina, Mark Robinson.
Okay.
He's been grappling with some scandals, and it could potentially impact
Right.
voter turnout.
Yeah, that'll definitely affect things.
Yeah.
So this path is basically saying, what if?
Right.
What if those scandals actually hurt Trump
Exactly.
in a state that he's historically been able to count on?
Yeah, and that's the thing.
What happens then?
Right. North Carolina, has been this sort of safe bet for him.
Yeah.
So path 4 is really saying, okay, what happens if North Carolina flips?
Okay.
But he manages to secure victories in these other states, Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Nevada.
Wow. So even if he loses one of those, kind of what we think of as
Yeah.
easier states to win, he could still...
You could still pull off a victory.
It highlights the fact that, there's no single path to victory.
Right.
If he takes those 4 states that I just mentioned,
Yeah.
he reaches 271 electoral votes.
Another tight one.
Another very tight victory.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So let me make sure I have this right.
Okay.
He loses North Carolina.
Right.
In this scenario.
Yeah.
Which, historically Republican,
Right.
but he wins Pennsylvania, where he's currently
Right.
trailing a little bit in the polls.
Exactly. And it just goes to show you that you can't just look at the historical trends.
Yeah.
Or even the current polling data.
Because voter sentiment can change so dramatically.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially in those crucial swing states.
And what about Nevada in this scenario?
So Nevada's an interesting case.
Okay.
It's been trending blue in recent elections.
Right.
But current polling actually shows Trump with a slight edge.
Interesting.
So it's definitely a state to watch.
Okay.
Especially in this specific scenario.
Yeah, it's like playing a giant game of political chess, right?
Yes, I love that analogy, moving those electoral votes around the board.
Okay, so speaking of strategic moves,
Yes.
let's talk about path 5.
Okay, let's do it.
This one is really interesting because
Yeah.
it's what if Harris wins
Yeah.
both Pennsylvania and North Carolina?
Right?
So now we're talking about a really big
Yeah.
challenge for Trump.
An uphill battle.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So how does he pull it off if he does
Yeah.
in this scenario?
So in this case, he really has to make some significant gains
Okay.
in other parts of the country. Path 5 hinges on him winning Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, and in Wisconsin.
Okay, so he needs those kind of
He's got to sweep them.
key battleground states, all of them,
All of them. Yep.
to make up for those other losses.
It's a taller order for sure.
Yeah.
But if he does that, he still reaches that 271.
Wow, it just goes to show you these states,
The other ones to watch.
Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, it's
Yeah.
those are the deal breakers.
They are. They're absolutely the states to watch.
Yeah.
And we've been kind of focusing on these individual paths and these different scenarios. But there's one more piece of the puzzle I want to add here.
Okay, lay down.
Okay, so Real Clear Politics They
Right, RCP.
exactly.
They compile all this polling data,
They do.
and then they make projections based on that.
Yeah, they use it to project what might happen.
Right, okay.
So I thought it would be interesting
Yeah.
to bring in their perspective.
What's the RCP crystal ball saying about all of this?
Okay, so here's where things get interesting.
Okay.
If their current polling averages hold true,
Yeah.
Trump wins by a landslide.
A landslide. Okay, so
Isn't that something?
not even close.
Right. Like completely different from those nail biters we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Right. So according to their projections, Trump wins every swing state except for Wisconsin.
So he keeps Georgia and North Carolina,
Keeps Georgia, North Carolina.
flips Pennsylvania,
Yep.
and he gets Arizona, Michigan, and Nevada.
That's what they're saying. That's what those projections are suggesting.
Wow.
And if that happens,
Yeah.
he ends up with a decisive 302 electoral votes.
Okay, so that's a huge
A
difference
huge contrast.
from those paths where he's like
I know.
just
We're
barely
just creeping by.
271. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
It just goes to show you
It really does.
that
Yeah.
a lot can happen
So much can change.
between now
Um,
and Election Day.
It's really anyone's game at this point.
It really is incredible.
Yeah.
It really makes you realize,
Yeah.
like, every single vote, every rally, every campaign ad,
Hmm?
it all, like, adds up
It does.
and could make the difference, especially in
Especially in those states.
these
Yeah.
key states.
Yeah.
Um,
It's those small margins.
right, exactly.
It's those little things that can really tip the scale.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
it's so important to remember that polls
Yes.
are just snapshots in time.
Exactly.
Right. They capture a moment.
Absolutely.
They can't tell the future.
Yo.
A lot can change between now
Oh, absolutely.
and Election Day.
So much can change. I mean,
You know,
voter turnout, late breaking news, events that nobody sees coming.
right.
All of these things can have a huge impact.
So while these potential paths to victory,
Yeah.
they're really fascinating to kind of analyze and look at,
Mm-hmm.
we also have to acknowledge that the race is, like,
Oh, it's far from over.
far from over. Anything could happen.
Absolutely anything can happen. Yeah.
Well, I don't know about you, but I am definitely feeling
Tell me about it.
more invested in this election now.
Yeah.
It's like watching a political thriller unfold in real time.
Right. You can't make this stuff up.
You can't. No,
It's better than any TV show out there.
it really is.
I'm telling you.
Yeah, so for everyone listening,
Yeah.
we're heading into these final weeks before the election.
I know, exciting times.
I know, and I think we've given you
I hope so.
a lot to consider.
A lot to think about. Yeah.
We've got these multiple pathways to victory,
Mm-hmm.
crucial swing states in play.
They're going to make or break it right.
They really are.
Yeah.
We just have to keep in
I'll
mind
see, always.
that things can change in an instant.
Absolutely. Yep.
So as those results start rolling in on election
I
night,
know. I can't wait.
what state races will you be watching most closely?
Ooh, good question.
That's something to think about.
It is. It is.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Yes. Thank you.
We'll be back next time
Looking forward to it.
with another fascinating topic.
See you then.